If you are here for the addiction content and you're wondering why does this guy talk about health all of a sudden, why does this guy talk about detoxification of heavy metals and other compounds, then this video is for you. Just bear with me, you will see how this is all connected, right? So I just had a lead call yesterday and I asked that human, how the spiritual path is going and if there's any. And she's like, no, I'm completely opposed to it. I grew up, in that weird family, and they used religion and mixed it with spirituality, and so she has all this, these negative connotations to it. And then, in my opinion, religion and spirituality is separate, right? But that's another topic. But to understand what I'm talking about, it's crucial that you know that any addict has a spiritual void present as the underlying theme, right? Which means you are not connected to self. You are not connected to yourself. You cannot sit still with yourself. You cannot sit still and let these thoughts come up and just sit with them and see what happens. You cannot do that. That's why you choose the substances. And deep down somewhere you feel that this is the right thing to do, but then when I talk about this, you're like, oh, this is not for me. This is like way too far ahead. This doesn't make any sense. But I'm not trying to sell you something that is not my truth, because I will tell you what is needed for you to get to where you want to go, even if that means that I will lose a few clients, because I think it's crucial that we agree on this in the beginning, okay? And if you have just a glimpse of this feeling left that this might be the right way, then go for it. And if you absolutely feel no chance, this is not for me, then it's also fine. And find someone else that just works on the subconscious, or just gives you a pill to, slap the symptoms around, right? But I go straight up, I'm a straight up guy. I will tell you straight away, what my intentions are and how I see addiction and how I see high performance and how I see that you can improve your life sustainably and in the long run, right? And this is only gonna happen if you come back to yourself, right? And that is the spiritual path. That's the spiritual path. And it doesn't have to be hours of meditation every day. You don't have to go to fucking India, and you don't have to go to all these retreats, and I don't have to do any of that, right? Just you cleaning up your life and finding back to yourself is your spiritual path, and that is enough. And you are enough even now, okay? I want you to understand that, because that is important, right? So when I talk about spirituality as an underlying problem with every addict, this is what I talk about, and this is what I mean, because it's just present with every addict. It doesn't matter. I've seen so many, and I was one myself back in the day, and all these mentors that I work with, they've also seen thousands. So it's just the truth, and you can turn it any way you want, and you will see all these Western taught psychiatrists and doctors. They will say, yeah, it's a brain disorder, and it's you've got a brain issue, and you're damaged, right? Like I've heard all kinds of shit, and this is not curable, and you're broken, and all that shit. Don't listen to any of that. Don't listen to any of that. I understand, and I understand all these hormones and how the brain works, and I do understand dopamine, and I do understand how this is all related. I do understand the conscious and the unconscious and the subconscious mind. Like, I know all of that, but this is not the crux of addiction, you know. This is a side product of the spiritual void, and we need to work through that as well. But if you clean up your body, your mind, your soul, then all of that is just going to happen automatically, right? With the right guidance, with the right tools, with the right practices, with the right rituals, you know. It's all just gonna flow, and you'll find back to yourself, which is your spiritual path. And now you will understand why I talk about detoxification, not just of the substances that you're taking. That's just going to happen naturally, right? Like, we don't even focus too much on that because, you know, at least the substances I usually work with, you know, with nasal ingestion of cocaine and alcohol and, you know, some pills and weed and stuff like that, that's just going to gradually leave your life, you know, because your focus will be somewhere else, and you won't feel the need and the urge to do it on a daily basis anymore, right? Like, there's some tools that we'll use for you to lower your intake, right? And to maybe trick your mind a little bit in the beginning and your brain into thinking you're fine, right? And you don't need that right now, but that's just the early days, right? But later on you will see you don't even need that stuff anymore, right? That's true freedom, by the way. And so when I talk about detoxification, not just the substances, not just the drugs, but also everything else that is in the way of you finding back to yourself, of you coming back to center, of you coming back into homeostasis, into balance, right? There's so much crap that's in the way that nobody talks about. There's really, really rarely any doctor and any Western medicine taught psychiatrist or, you know, human in these niches that talks about this, because they're not taught any of that. And I talk about this often. It's substances like and toxins like glyphosate, heavy and soft metals like aluminum, mercury, then also fluoride is a big one. And, you know, then we move into the frequencies like Wi-Fi and, you know, your phone, your headphones, you know, your router at night, like it has to be turned off, right? Like, check your positioning of the bed. Are you next to, you know, the outlets, the electricity? Where's your head pointing at? Like, all that stuff maybe sounds ridiculous to you right now, but this is all connected, okay? And believe me, I worked with, you know, doctors and humans and professors that went super deep on each of these topics, and they look through all the research, they scan all the literature, right? So I just put together whatever I learned, right? Like, I'm not that guy doing that research, you know. I just basically decide who I believe is right and who I believe has the experience and who I believe has an open heart and who I believe has good intentions with what they talk about, right? Because there's not many out there. And I'm pretty good at you know, finding these humans, and then I learn from them, right? And I learn what they've learned over the course of their careers, you know, and most of them, they're in the 60s and 70s, and, you know, it's just remarkable how much information is out there, but then again, not enough, right? Especially when we talk about the combination of these compounds, right? It's really funny how little there is when, you know, 4 or 5 compounds are, you know, connected, and when they are compounding in a system over time, right? Super dangerous shit, especially then when we talk about frequencies and the exposure to frequencies on a daily basis, and then you have 4 or 5 toxins that are really accumulating, you know, since like 10, 15, 20 years, and it just damages, like, you know, literally every corner of your system, of your body, right? And so, yeah, the more I go into these topics, the deeper I go into these topics, the more I know that it's dirty shit, you know, that I learn. And It's really remarkable how little we are protected by the system. And with the system, I mean, governments and all these government bodies that are supposed to, check what goes on and what goes into our bodies and stuff. But actually, they don't do anything. They just have no clue, and they're so many years behind of everything, probably on purpose, maybe not. That's not the point of this video. And then on the other hand, you have these so-called experts, right, that are supposed to know these topics, but then again, how can you expect them to know these topics when they haven't been taught any of that? The humans that I know that know their shit, they've all been self-taught. None of that happened in university. None of that happened in their training afterwards. That all happened in that phase when they started working professionally and they felt something was off, something wasn't adding up, and then they just dove deep into these topics, and they met other people that were doing the same, and then all of them ran into huge problems with the system. They would lose their license to work as doctors. They would lose their voice. They would lose their certificates, like all that shit, just because they were thinking and talking about the wrong subjects. And with wrong, it's contrary to the narrative that they want you to swallow, right? So I hope this gives you a little glimpse into how I think and why I deem it absolutely crucial that any of you that is, listening does clean up their system, and that you have to do it, and that this is crucial. It doesn't matter if you are an addict, it doesn't matter if you're a high performer, it doesn't matter if you're just a parent or a man or a woman that wants to improve their health. You will need to go through this, right? And it's gonna be a little interesting phase in your life. It's gonna suck a little bit, right? But you'll be fine. Afterwards you'll be healthy, and you won't have to deal with all these problems when you're fucking 70 and 80, right? You'll be fucking fit, and you'll be able to enjoy life, So that's the cool stuff, right? If you do the work now, you'll be much better off later. It's always been that way with everything, basically. So yeah, if you feel like any of this resonates, I am working on a really cool program that I basically put together to make all of this more understandable and to give you actionable steps and to actually show you exactly how this is done, so you can do that at home by yourself. You won't need me, or you won't need to invest into my one-on-one programs that not everybody can afford, and I understand, right? Like I've heard that plenty of times, but this is the solution now. This is what I'm doing right now for you, for that human that cannot afford the one-on-ones with me. And yeah, since I do this with everyone that I work with, it's just the basics. It's very high level, of course, but to me those are the basics. And if you handle the basics, everything in life changes, and everything will be working much more smoothly in your life. And you will see brain fog will be gone, gut problems will be gone, leaky gut will be gone. What else? Like any skin issues that you might have had, any, literally like any chronic thing that you have will probably improve from, focusing on these basics, right? Your vision might improve. There's a lot of shit, So, if you have any questions, DM me on Instagram or comment below. And also, if you want to work one-on-one with me, DM me as well. I have a couple spots every month that I fill. And yeah, that's it. I hope you got value out of this, even though you don't want to get going. And I'll talk to you soon.